Portraiture is something that a lot of people struggle with, but it can be really easy if you break it down into very simple steps. I think what's really important is that you think initially about proportions when you're drawing things out. Secondly, you think about the structure, the bone structure, in the case of portraiture. And thirdly, you think about the details. And one of the problems, I think, is that people often jump straight to the details and forget about the first two stages. And this is actually a really good structure for doing anything, landscape, portraiture, anything at all. For the proportions of the face, though, what we're thinking about is beginning perhaps with a sort of center line that runs down between the eyes, center of the nose, center of the mouth. Deciding where you want the crown of the head to be and where you want the chin to be. Generally speaking, if the face is looking straight on at you, about halfway between those two marks, roughly, should be where the eyes sit, somewhere around about there. Maybe just about halfway or slightly above between the eyes and the chin is where the nose comes in. And about a third of the way down between the nose and the chin is where we would expect to see the mouth. Now this varies a lot depending on the people or the person that you're drawing, but it's a good guide to begin with, just to get you started. You then build the head around that, and it's slightly more bulbous at the top of the head than it is at the bottom. Sort of a pointy side down egg is what we're looking for. Second stage, the structure. So once you've got that basic proportion in place, you're looking at the bone structure. And there are three main areas of bone structure that affect the face for the artist. The first one being the eye sockets. And again, depending on how you're lit, these will be obvious or not, but it's a good idea to be aware of them regardless. Slightly harder edge at the top of the eye socket, slightly softer edge towards the bottom. Second area that we have to be aware of are the cheekbones, or the zygomatic bone in the cheek. Little bit of shadow just under there, almost like a little triangle as it comes down into the mandible. You're just softening that shadow in there and creating that sense of a cheekbone. Again, depending on your model, these will be really prominent or not, but it's a good idea, as ever, to be aware that they're there, and it helps you to create that illusion of form on the flat surface. Third area of bone structure, often covered by the hair, but again, good to just have it in place, the temples. And it's not until you've got that structure and those proportions in place that you start to think about the details. Now, once you've practiced that a few times, it's a good idea to think about the head from different angles, because you're not always going to be drawing a face that's straight on looking at you. So thinking about maybe beginning to curve that center line. If we've got a 3/4 view, it's likely that that center line will run something like this. The eyes will still sit about halfway between crown and chin, in about there, but we might only see part of the faraway eye. The nose will still sit where it is, but it'll project out slightly from the head. And the mouth, again, same kind of proportions, but just a very small amount of the far side of the mouth, much narrower, much longer bit of the side of the mouth that's close to us. Again, the same idea with the bone structure. Still be aware of the fact that you've got eye sockets to put in. Suggestion of the cheekbone. This time we'll see an awful lot more of that hollow between the mandible and the zygomatic bone. Still soften off the edges, and you'll see an awful lot more as well of the temple. Now there's quite a major change if the head's tipped forwards or backwards. So the same kind of thing applies. We've got that center line that we would think about first, but if we're looking up, let's say, if the head's looking up and we're underneath, the curvature of that center line will be tilting back quite dramatically. We'll still have this notion that there's a scale here with crown of head and chin. There'll still be a halfway point where the eyes will be sitting in there. One big eye, little eye on the other side. Halfway between that, or just slightly above, will be roughly where our nose will project. And the mouth sitting again about a third of the way or so down between chin and nose. Again, eye sockets in place. And the opposite is also true for a head tipped forwards. Now, these are very simple ideas, but if you get a working knowledge of how these basic proportions and structures work, it makes it so much easier to achieve really realistic looking heads.